So since we have gone on overlapping events, which we are we have gone through and made our structures based on that one. Let's say this is for the BP graph actually, and now I would like to actually introduce to you one of the another event which is called an hit event. It's a component hit event. So let's say we have in the viewport our ball is still a component, and when it hits some other actors, it's going to produce some kind of an effect, and we can actually make it a result in some kind of result based on that one. So what we need to do actually, we need to click on the ball component and then right click and say hit component, or I think what is required context sensitive. Yep, hit add on component hit. Fine. So now we have a hit component which is based on the ball component, and from here we want to see that what exactly the ball was hit against. It must be an actor, so we need to get an reference to that particular component. So let's say we use cast to static mesh actor. So in this case we're going to have an actor actually showing the component static, let's say static mesh actor. There you go. And now since we have it, we would like to actually take this static mesh actor and do something to it. So in this case it's most probably we're going to add some kind of an action to it, and in that way we can have another node. It's called add impulse. So you see here we have add impulse for the character component, but what we need is actually for the physics. So add impulse, and we have a target which is a primitive component, it's expecting a primitive component object, and by definition the static mesh actor is actually also is a primitive component, and we can just bring in and say I think static mesh component. So get static mesh component, there you go. And now what we need to do is to actually connect to the add the impulse to basically this component which is actually hit by the ball. And before doing that one, we want to see if that particular component is actually simulating a physics. How do we do that actually? So what we can do is we'll take a pen out of it and saying, is it simulating physics? If this particular component is actually simulating physics. So if its physics is enabled for it, then it's going to return a value either true or false. Now one way of doing it actually is to take that value, return value, and use another node called branch. There you go. So if the condition is actually true, then we are going to add the impulse. If it's false, we're not going to do anything actually. So let's just connect this one and then connect this. And in our case, what we can also, that we are expecting a target, so we can take a pin from it and directly link it to the target. So what's going to happen in the case when it's true, it's going to add impulse to this particular component into a certain direction. So here we have another vector component. This time it's mostly into a direction actually, that before it was more of a strength in the previous one, if you look at it actually in the origin part, and now we have an impulse which can be added to this. Let's check the velocity change as well, and for the impulse we want to get the velocity of our ball, which is basically here, and whichever direction that ball was moving, that's the direction where the impulse should be created on. So how we can do that? We need to get velocity, of our ball itself. So let's see, what do we have? We have a lot of get velocity here, and the one which we need is under transformation. So get velocity, you see it is already self for the ball itself. and it is going to add the impulse to the particular to the static match which is actually hitting, and it is going to move in that direction. So rather than pressing O, which we were doing for the previous one, now this time when we're going to hit another actor, it is going to move that particular actor into a direction to which the ball was moving. So let's test it out and let's see what will happen. So we move the ball, okay, and there you go. If you see, I'm not pressing any O here because now when the component, which is basically the ball, it is hitting the cubes, it is creating some impulse. So let's say we will come from a far place and then we'll try and see exactly how much of the impulse it is creating. So let's move another bit, little bit like this, and let's have a velocity which is a higher velocity, and there you go. So higher the velocity will create the higher the impulse over your static meshes which are there. So this is working perfectly. I really want to make you understand that the difference between an overlap and a hit one, and how automatically you can actually create impulse basically for in your game and apply to it. So and this ball is going crazy, but anyhow, so that concludes our basically all the basics which we require for our game development in terms of how the logic has to be created, how different blueprints can be created as well. I think there is a warning here. It's a primitive does not inherit from primitive component. Okay, I guess static mesh actor. Okay, so we can ignore this at the moment, and we'll just compile it and just save it. So with that, we have concluded our basics for overall Unreal Engine functions. As I think it's better that you guys also have the project file, which is also a part of this tutorial, and it has the same template. It will be available to you, so it's better you go through all the tutorials which we have covered and make sure that all the functions are implemented for you guys to really understand that how this everything works together. So let's move forward into the next tutorial, where we will start building our first game from scratch.